Hey there and welcome back. This time we're going to take a look at how I've radically changed the way I take notes and just kind of how I organize my life using these tools that I've been playing with since the start of this year, or what I like to call my AI-powered workflow. So in previous videos, you've seen me mess with a bunch of different vibe coding tools, AI tools just in general, and just kind of playing with these agents on different types of projects. In the background, I've actually been changing how I basically do everything on my computer and how I organize my work, how I take notes, how I get organized, and a lot of it has to do with AI. So that's what this video is about. Now, this is something I've been using since the start of this year. Today being February the 5th means I've used it for over a month. So just that fact alone is really surprising to me and why I'm making this video right now. Still, I'm going to try to keep this as short and concise as possible so you don't get bored too quickly. So let's just talk about the problem. Why did I even do this in the first place? I was honestly struggling with the things I think we kind of all struggle with on some level, whether you have ADHD or not. Things like context switching, forgetting things. I was forgetting to take notes. And then when I took notes, I was putting them in all kinds of random places in my account. I couldn't find them, so they weren't useful. So why was I even taking notes? And on and on. So those are broadly the kinds of problems I was running into. One of the things I was sure I wanted to do was somehow leverage everything I've been learning about AI, playing and building all these different vibe coded projects, sharing them with you on YouTube, putting them on GitHub. It's pretty cool. It's interesting. I was learning a lot, but it wasn't really feeling like it was being useful to me. It was just kind of interesting, exciting experiments with no real positive outcome for me. So I wanted to try and take that knowledge and actually do something useful. So some of the things I've learned about AI building some of these projects is that generally it's pretty useful in very specific use cases. A lot of people, at least I see online, are trying to use AI for absolutely everything, and that's where they run into issues when, of course, inevitably AI stumbles. But if you're talking about specific use cases, AI is actually pretty good, and there are some cases where it's better than others. So part of the skill of using AI is knowing when to use it and when not to use it. So that's one thing. The next thing I thought about was, well, if I've got these specific use cases where AI seems to be pretty useful, I'm using it a lot in my day-to-day as these kind of isolated islands of AI productivity, then the trick would be to somehow thread those use cases into some sort of a loop. So they're not just one-off instances where I'm opening some sort of program, using AI, and then going back to my notes and then doing that over and over. And lastly, the closer you can keep the context that you're working on to the AI and give it the tools necessary to actually act upon it, the better your results are going to be. That's just kind of generally what I found. So next I had the idea of collapsing everything into one simple loop. If I could just somehow tie all the work that I do on a day-to-day basis together into one simple loop and then kind of branch from that as I need, then that would be much easier to remember for me, a lot more likely to actually become a habit. And so that's going to mean less mental overhead with the AI taking over some of the things that I struggle with on a day-to-day basis. And lastly, it's a really good idea to somehow keep a log of all the activities you're doing, because as you use these agents, you realize they don't have a memory. You have to manage that for them. Some of them have built-in memories and things like that, but really to get the best results, you have to manage that memory and make sure you are aware of where you're putting in there, and then how is that memory being used. You're not just kind of writing it and storing it, you're actually making use of it. So after I thought about what sort of things I would want to include in my solution, I thought about bigger picture things. Like, what am I actually trying to do here? What am I trying to solve? And really, it's not trying to replace myself. It's trying to augment my abilities with AI. And I'm kind of already doing that in bits and pieces here and there as tasks come up. But I really wanted to have some sort of single loop that connects everything together. And like I said, I really wanted it to help me where I was struggling the most, where I was struggling to remember things, to take notes, to keep track of all the different moving pieces that I have to deal with in my personal life and in my professional work. And so if I could build something to help me out with that, that would be kind of amazing. One thing I was definitely sure about this project is that I wanted it to leave me in control of all the decisions and just kind of handle the grunt work. I wanted to set it up in a way that it would leave me in control of all the decisions. I didn't want to delegate absolutely everything and just kind of give it all the permissions, all the keys to the kingdom and let it run wild. That seemed like a pretty bad idea. I wanted it to be my executive assistant, not my employee. So while I'm sure we'll get to that point sometime in the future where we can really trust AI agents and really just kind of let them do whatever and they'll mostly be fine, we're not quite there yet. So this is the next best thing. And so now let's actually take a look at what that loop is. And like I said at the start, it's supposed to be really simple, but that simplicity is kind of what makes it really powerful. So let me walk you through it. Step one is start a new conversation the way you would with any other AI tool or AI agent. So the difference here is the agent is going to get the context it needs automatically. And I'll talk a little bit more about how that happens. But essentially, it's going to read the most recent log. The log is going to cover the previous activities and a bunch of other information that's going to be really important for the agent to have the context it needs to do what it needs to do. And essentially, at that point, it's ready to start working. The added benefit here being is that because it read the most recent log, it has all the context, and so it's going to be able to pick up right where the last conversation left off. So that's the first part, just starting a conversation, and this part happens automatically. And that's pretty much it, just as simple as starting a conversation, and the agent is going to go off and get all the context it needs. Like I said, I'll walk you through how that actually happens, but that's the first part. It gets all the context it needs. And now it's ready to start working. So I can do everything I usually do with AIs and different windows and in different applications. I can brainstorm, I can draft, I can execute, I can, ask it to write summaries or investigate something for me. And then for the more advanced activities, I've given it skills so it can use things like APIs, it can write code, it can access a bunch of other third-party applications. So if you've ever used something like Claude Code or Open Code, you kind of maybe have heard about this concept of skills. It's really just a document that also maybe has some other things like pieces of code or instructions on how to do a particular task. Like maybe you want your agent to check your calendar or to do something on your behalf. If that third-party service has an API, you can have it write a skill, and then the agent will be able to perform that activity on your behalf. So that's the same kind of idea, except not doing it in the terminal. We're going to be doing it inside of Workflowy, and I'm going to show you a really cool and simple way to have that all set up. And so some of these skills allow it to handle things that I struggle with, or I can do on my own, but it would just take me forever or would just be a hassle. And that also lets me quickly iterate and pull in resources to work with. So it's like having an extra pair of hands. As long as I connect it to the right things, the useful things, I can just have a conversation and it's able to kind of pull all the things we need to work together. Next is that the notes happen automatically. Because of the instructions I've given the agent along the way as I'm kind of just having this conversation and we're working through projects or brainstorming, the agent is going to be actually writing notes on my behalf. And it's going to do that automatically, but I can also just ask it to do that. And it's got a workflow that it's supposed to use. So it uses the same template each time. And so this is what I found most useful. So that frees me up to focus on the task at hand. And so it's kind of bringing everything to the table that is needed for the work while also making sure you can just focus on the thing and it's going to handle the rest of the moving parts. Lastly is the handoff. So this is when the session ends. Like I said, the agent automatically is going to take notes throughout the work session, but at the end you can just let it know, okay, can you just create the log, and it'll use the template that you've already specified and create the same standard log for today, which it's then going to use the next time you start a conversation with it. And so that's how it's able to pick up exactly where you left off. All right, so that was a lot of explanation. So now let's talk about how to actually set this up. You really only need a couple of things. We need two apps. We need the thing that's going to interface with the agent. So you're not using just the terminal. You can also do that if you prefer. And so we have some options here. We've got Claude Code, Open Code, and there's a couple of different options. But I would honestly recommend using either Craft Agents or Cherry Studio, which provide a much nicer interface to talk to the agents and just connect things. For most people, I think it's just going to be a more comfortable way to work with agents. So previously I was using Cherry Studio quite heavily, but thanks to a recommendation from Frank from the Workflowy Slack group, I actually got turned on to Craft Agents, which has turned out to be really good. And it's also open source and it's also free and available on all major platforms, Mac, Windows, and Linux. So I'll be sure to link to that in the description so you can install that. So that's our LLM app and our note system, which in this case is going to be Workflowy. If you hadn't already guessed, that's what I'm presenting the video on. And because I put in a bit more work into that local MCP server that we're going to be using to actually connect AIs to Workflowy. It just works really well together, kind of get the best of both worlds. I get a note-taking system that fits my brain, but I can also connect it to large language models, and I give them a way to actually manipulate and read Workflowy in a way that fits their electronic brains much better. So kind of the best of both worlds. So that's it for the apps, and actually I'll just go ahead and add this here. That was missing. Local MCP Server. The links for that app are also going to be available in the description, and I'll show you how to set it up as well. So that's our apps, and then the last thing we need are our notes. So there's just 3 notes. We have a context file, session logs, and a note area, and this last one is completely optional. So what are these files? these are actually the instructions that the agent is going to use to know what it's supposed to do. For example, the context file explains the loop. It tells the agent which notes to check at the start of each conversation. It gives it a little bit more context about who I am, what its role is. You can obviously change all of these. And because they're just nodes inside of Workflowy, you can update them instantly. It also lists things like key locations in your account. It explains specific workflows, any preferences, and also rules or constraints like, always ask me before you delete things, or don't touch anything in this section, or anything like that. So that's the context file. Next, we have the session logs, and those are just the historical logs of the activities, all the notes, all the topics we discussed, decisions that I took, any open loops. Was I discussing something? Oh, I'm going to do this thing, or I'm going to work on this thing, and then I ended the session, never got back to it. That's going to be recorded in the session log so I can get back to it. And then lastly, a notes area. So this is something you might want to explore if you want to give your agent a little bit more of a long-term memory. The log is really what serves that purpose, but something you might want to experiment with, giving the agent sort of a space where it can just kind of keep its own notes for whatever purpose. So the idea behind that is the context file and the session logs are there because that's what I came up with. That's what I thought would be useful. But as I work with the agent more over time, it's also possible that it's going to need context that I'm not having it store either in the context file or in the logs, and it's not going to know where to put it. And if I don't tell it that, it could actually just store that information somewhere, whatever notes it thinks are relevant for helping me, then it's just not going to perform as well. So this is something I've been experimenting with, and it's really simple. You could just add it by adjusting the context file, letting it know about this notes area and that it has permission to just kind of put notes when it thinks something useful should be in there. So that was the setup. Now let's jump into me actually showing you all the different applications, how they're kind of connected, and then we'll get into the demo. So like I said, I've been using Craft Agents a lot. It's been really useful. It's got a really nice interface. It allows you to do a bunch of other useful things like organize your sessions, tag them. It has this kind of task management, project management kind of a feel because it has a way where you can tag the items, you can give them different flags, and obviously you can customize all this, and it just makes it really nice to use agents for any type of work, whether that's professional work or just in your personal life. So it doesn't feel like you're just in this long conversation in a regular chat type of an interface. This is, I think, a pretty good option to go with. And so this is what it looks like. On the left-hand side, you have a way to get to all your chats. You can flag conversations. You can give them statuses. You can change these statuses. You can label things. So I've created some of these labels. Haven't used them yet, but I'm about to start trying to use these. And also where you can manage the different sources. So if you're connecting your agents to any sort of tools like MCPs, like the local MCP we're just about to connect it to, or if you're going to connect it to any APIs, or if you want to use local folders or anything like that. This section here is for skills, which we're going to do slightly differently. We're going to have them inside of Workflowy just because it's easier. You can edit them like anything inside of Workflowy. So that just feels a lot more natural to me. And the way you actually connect your agents is using this option right here. You can connect it to other models using Open Router. I haven't tried connecting it to ChatGPT because I believe they use a different standard, but I'm not sure. So that might also be possible. But you could also just go through Open Router and connect it to any model that you want, basically. And then you can also enable notifications. So if you set your agent off to do some research for you or some work, you can just set it off, open up another browser, start doing something else, and you'll get notified when it's done or when it needs your attention. So that's pretty much it. It's really simple. And here on GitHub is where you're going to get the Workflowy Local MCP app. You're going to go to the release section right here, and then you are going to scroll down and pick the version that you need. So either for Windows or for Mac. And I believe you could also install it for Linux. I'm not super familiar with how that works, but I believe the build process I use to actually output these files also generates one you could use on Linux. If you have any trouble with that, let me know and I will help you figure that out. So basically you just click here or click here, download it, open it up, and let me show you what it looks like. So if you actually watch the video on how I put this together, it's changed a little bit, but it's essentially the same. Here's where you input your Workflowy API key, and here's where you copy the setup to give to the agent to set it up so you don't have to worry about that. You can also customize the tools, you can customize the server instructions, do anything you need to make any tweaks in here. The bookmark section has been revamped a little bit because we're making heavier use of that. So the agent doesn't have to perform as many searches. It's able to store important parts of your account in memory and then can just reference the location in the account without having to search all the time. So as you can see, I've got a couple of these all set up. You can edit them, you can delete them. Here we've got a place just to look at the cache and then also the logs. These logs now actually work and you can see everything that's going on, all the tool calls and everything that's happening. So to actually connect everything together, let's say you've downloaded the Craft Agents app and you've just added your key for either OpenRouter or Anthropic or whatever. So now it has access to agents. Then you've downloaded the Workflowy Local MCP Server. And if you're on Mac, there are some instructions in there because the operating system is locked down. You need to just write two little things in the terminal to let your operating system let you actually open the application. Otherwise, it's going to tell you that, it's from a untrusted developer. It's going to try and throw it in the trash. But once you've done that, it's going to let you open it and you add your key. And then you go to setup and you can just use this one right here. Copy this configuration because like I said, Craft is pretty much based on Claude code. So it's going to understand that very well. And then you actually just let it know what you want to do. You can tell the agent in here, you start a new conversation, let it know, hey, set up this MCP server. It'll do its thing. And then once it's done, it'll show up right here under MCPs. And so there's really nothing else for you to do. The agent's going to set up the MCP server for you and you're kind of done here. You just start a new chat. And so this next part really depends on which front end you're using to connect to the agents, but most of them are going to have something similar. They're going to have a way for you to either specify which MCP servers you're actually connecting to. In the case of Craft Agents, that's down here under Choose Sources. We just want to make sure we click on Workflowy. And so now the agent we use is going to have access to our Workflowy MCP server. And so to kick this off, I'm just going to tell it something like, hey there, to let it run its process. And in the meantime, we're going to switch over to the Workflowy account so I can show you how this is actually working in the background. We're back in Workflowy. Let me zoom out for a moment. And as you can see, we've got this new section here called AI. And this is just what I decided to call it. You can call it whatever you want. What's really cool about being able to connect Workflowy to these agents is that because everything is happening inside of Workflowy, all the instructions are inside of Workflowy other than the ones for the MCP server, which you can edit as well. That means you can edit anything at any point. So for example, we have this one here, the AI instructions. These are the main instructions our agent is going to use. This is what it reads every single time we start a new conversation. So at the top, we've got, when starting conversations, read these instructions first. And here's where we let it know, check the most recent log entry for context from previous sessions. Check the inbox and surface any items. Help decide, work on it, archive, or delete. So this is another part that's really difficult for me and really simple for the agent. I have an inbox in my account that I almost never check. I put stuff in there and then nothing happens to it. So this is an area where I struggle with, but the agent is not going to struggle with because it's part of the instructions and it's one of the first things it's supposed to do. So if that works, we're going to see in just a moment when I jump back to the conversation how it's going to look through and see if there's anything in there. And then it's also got other things like the tone that you want. Who am I? What is this context that it's working inside of? I've listed some key locations just to kind of give it some idea about where it might want to start looking in the account the first time. I've also described the different workflows, so the daily logging. I've got some inbox processing steps here, and then also video planning. This is not as fleshed out as another account that I have that I use for my work, but for obvious reasons, I can't quite show that one. So this is my personal account, so this is why it's kind of much more bare bones, but it works exactly the same way. And as you can imagine, you just kind of build it up over time as your needs change over time. And then lastly, I've got this really cool thing called AI skills. So if you've used something like Claude Code or Open Code, this is going to be very familiar to you. Skills are just a convention we've kind of come up with to give the agents some instructions on how to use different tools like APIs or how to access different things. We've done the exact same thing, but it's all inside of Workflowy. There are no markdown files, there are no folders. It's all inside of Workflowy. And that means that at any point you can change them if they are not working like you expect them to. So the way it works is really simple. When user asks to use a skill, check the AI skills bookmark for available skills. And then each skill has a name, instructions, credentials if needed, blah, blah, blah. And so if we open up the MCP app and jump down to bookmarks, you can see we've got AI instructions and we also have AI skills. And it's got a little description for the LLM for itself, just so it knows what in the world this thing is and where in our workflow account it's located. You can edit these, delete them, or you can just actually tell the agent, hey, get rid of this bookmark or update it. I've moved it or I've recreated it or I've renamed it or whatever. These are not hard coded. You can tell it to change them if you want to do that. In our case, that's going to be right down here. A little bit of an explanation for what this is. And so the only one I've added for demo purposes, like I said, the one that's really fleshed out is the one I use for my work. And so it would be kind of hard to demo it in there because it's a bunch of very confidential stuff, so I can't quite do that, but it works exactly the same way. You give it these skills. So things, if you're not familiar with what that is, it's a task manager. It allows you to create tasks and then set reminders. It's as simple as that. So one of the things app allows you to do is talk to it using its own kind of URL schema. So you can think of it as a very simple API, but you can do the exact same thing with any API. So we've got our credentials. I'm not going to open that up for obvious reasons, because then you would start to add things to my to-do list. And as much as I trust you, that'd be kind of annoying. It explains to the agent how to actually use it, any rate limits, coding, commands. The way that I got it to actually set this up, I obviously did not write any of this. It would take me a while to understand it and then explain it and write the commands. So the way that it actually did this is I just gave it the link to the documentation for the thing's URL scheme and said, hey, can you just write a skill for me and then put it here? And that's exactly what it did. The only thing it asked me for was, hey, I need your credentials because otherwise I can't actually access your account. And so I did, and that's right in here. And that's it. It's as simple as that. Now it has a skill for how to use things. So if I need to set up a reminder, and I'll demo that in a moment, it can do that. And if I need to tweak something because the agent I'm using is getting confused or I decide to do things differently, instead of having to open files and edit things like that, I just open up Workflowy here and let's say that something about how the URL format is different. It's changed now because they've updated the app or whatever. I can literally just go in here, do that. There's not even any saving. And then I just start talking to my agent and it's up to date. So that to me is one of the things that makes this setup particularly cool. Yes, you can connect local files to your agents using applications like Craft Agents or Cherry Studio or whatever. And yes, you can also add skills and those are markdown files, but having everything live inside one single application is just really cool. Enough of that, let's jump back into Craft Agents and see what our agent has done. Hey, caught up on the context from earlier today. You were setting up AI instructions and the context collapse reference doc and testing nested versus flat structures. Nested one out, as it always does. Your inbox has 3 items. There's a link in here. There's this thing called organize topics that just seems like it to do, and also make new thumbnails for YouTube. So 2 tasks and 1 link. Plus there's a note from earlier about channel docs possibly moving to archive or topics. So this is actually from a conversation where I was kind of getting it to help me organize and reorganize my account. So that's what that's about. Want to triage any of these or what's on your mind? Let's actually do it. So this first one, like it says, is a link. So can you summarize the link for me? And again, we'll jump back so I can show you some more things. And so I wanted to show you that the logs are actually updating in real time. And so if you need to debug it or make a report or anything like that, you can just copy it from here and share that with me. But now is probably a good time to also discuss what's going on and what's changed from the previous version of the application. Because if you watched the previous video on the local MCP server and how I kind of put that together, one of the biggest issues we were having was that it was making a ton of API calls because Workflowy's unique outliner structure is not really well suited to large language models out of the box. It needs to have a little bit of massaging to make it work well. These large language models have been trained on different types of files. And so the most common, as you can imagine, are things like Markdown or TXT files, things like that. And so they're very accustomed to manipulating and reading and editing those types of files. Workflowy is one giant outline structure, and that's very different. And so that's why I had to spend some time refining the bookmark system, refining the prompts, and also adding a much better caching system. So at the start of every new conversation, it syncs your entire account. And then as the agent makes different tool calls, it wants to save something, edit something, it'll just make those quick syncs across your Workflowy account just to make sure it's got the context, or if you've gone in there and made any changes while it was still doing its thing. And so what that allows us to do is perform actions that you can't actually currently do through the Workflowy API. So for example, search nodes. You cannot search nodes through the Workflowy API as of today. Maybe that'll come in the future, but it's not available. So that's why we sync the entire Workflowy account at the start of each new conversation. So then we can perform all kinds of advanced searches and all kinds of different manipulations that are really hard to do if we had to pull the nodes and their children one by one. It would be a ton of API calls, and this just lets us perform actions much more quickly. So that's what's given the agents the ability to handle this kind of strange and unique outline structure that is so useful for humans, but maybe a little bit more difficult to deal with if you're a bot. And so our agent got the link from the inbox. It was about today's release of Claude Opus 4.6. Anthropic just dropped a new model, and so these are the most important facts from that release. Now I'm going to tell it to archive this, and also let's take a look at what topics I have. And there we go, done, move to archive, and it's also showing me my topics. So let's see here, topics, and then as you can see, it can now also show us all the nested items. Now previously this would have been really slow, nothing to do with the agents, it's just the nature of Workflowy's outline structure. What makes it so useful for humans also makes it a little bit tricky for agents, at least before these last updates. And so now when the agent searches, it's not just going to get the top level nodes or any of the sibling nodes, it's also going to be able to specify a depth and bring all those nodes along with it. So by default, I believe it's either just one node deep, so the parents, the siblings, and the children. But if for any reason the agent needs to go deeper into your account, it can also do that using its search tool. So it could search for a node, and let's say it's just very deeply nested. It's got a bunch of projects and tasks and a bunch of things in there. It can pull all of that with one single search tool call versus, as you can imagine, trying to pull out all those individual nodes would be kind of a nightmare. So that just speeds things up significantly. So yeah, here we've got the different topics that I was going to discuss. So now let's try something a little bit different. Let's just try sorting them by which ones have actually been updated. Sort the topics based on recency. The ones that have been updated most recently go near the top. Oh, and unfortunately, it seems like Workflowy actually doesn't expose modification timestamps through their API. So that's going to be a feature request that I'm going to have to make. Not a problem with the system. It's just the way that the API currently works. But I can help you sort them based on what you know. From what I've seen in your logs and recent activity, here's my guess at a reasonable order. So here's where those logs come in. And this is something I hadn't actually thought about, but it has access to them. It knows what they're for. And so it's able to do this. And so that's actually a pretty good guess based on the logs that I have and the discussions we've been having. So that seems totally fine. So unfortunately, it wasn't able to do it because it doesn't have access to the timestamps, but it was able to use the other information we have, which are the logs and other pieces of context, to kind of piece this together. So yes, pre-order them. As you can see, it's kind of shifting things around in real time. Just wanted to show you that so you don't think that it doesn't actually work. It actually does totally work. There we go, done. And this is the new order. Active stuff at top, inactive, empty at bottom. You also had organized topics in your inbox. Want me to clear that one out since we just did it? Yes, what else do I need to do? Done, your inbox is down to one item. Make new thumbnails for YouTube. What do you want to do with this one? Work on it, move it somewhere like activity for scheduling, or leave it in the inbox for later. And so as you can see, it has context for this section here, activity, which is the one where I mainly work from every single day. So this was a great recommendation. So I'm going to tell it to move it to now and break it down for me. Make new thumbnails for YouTube. And it added a couple of tasks like identify which videos need new thumbnails, look at top performing thumbnails for inspiration, and so on. So really nice. And all I did was talk to the agent inside of my chat application. There we go, done, moved to now and broken down. And here are those same steps that we just saw in the Workflowy account. And just to double check that the inbox is in fact completely empty. So it did move those items out of there. And now one last thing to complete this workflow. Okay, great. Log what we did. There we go. Here is the updated entry for today. Topics discussed, added new 4. I already had some from previously experimenting with the agent earlier. Summarize Claude Opus 4.6 announcement, triage inbox, reorder topics, broke down thumbnail task, moved to now. One last thing about the log, you could just create a node in your account, call it log or archive or whatever you want to call it, and use that. I happen to be using Workflow's built-in calendar feature just because it at least makes sense to me to keep my notes with the agent's notes in one single place. So if I click on the today icon, this is exactly what the agent sees, and this is what I see as well. So we're kind of working on top of the same file. And so we have the same context. There's not like the agent's logs and my logs, it's our logs. So, there's no confusion about what we talked about or what we did. It's clear to both of us. And I almost forgot because I didn't open up the demo node. We emptied the inbox. We checked notes from the previous day plus updated, but I didn't set a reminder in things, which is using the skill. So let me show you how that works now. One last thing, in things, can you remind me to update the channel description tomorrow? Tomorrow at 9 a.m. And there we go. Read the things skill instructions to create the reminder. So just wanted to show you that it actually all pretty much works. Obviously, this has been kind of adjusted so it works for my workflow, but there we go. And the things app just popped up and update channel description is right there. So as you can see, pretty nice. Everything kind of works. Let me just open it up to see. It didn't actually get the time. So for example, that's something that I could tweak very simply if it didn't have the right instructions, or maybe there's not even a way to do that. I'm actually not quite sure if things allows you to do that. So probably just the instructions are missing or incorrect for how to set a specific time. Done, created a reminder in things for tomorrow, February 6th at 9 a.m. Update channel description. Things should have popped up to show you the task. Anything else? And so just like that, we've been able to take care of the inbox, organize some things, set a reminder, and I've been able to show you how it all kind of works. And so those might not have been the most exciting demonstrations of how this works, but that's kind of the point. It's really nothing flashy. It's honestly pretty simple and kind of surprising how well it works. So for example, this part right here, like I said, I would just open up the workflow account, jump into the skills node, or even ask the agent here, hey, you missed adding the actual time. Could you reread the documentation? Is that not possible? Or maybe just reinforce that so the next time I ask you to add a time, you add the time, something like that. And because it's all visible in the workflow account, we can make any tweaks in case the agent makes a mistake or we change our mind or whatever. Everything just kind of lives inside the workflow and the agent is interacting with it, using it as a long-term memory, writing the logs, keeping the user, in this case me, on task. And it's just been a really nice experience. And so that's it. Set a reminder in things, demo complete. And so that's my AI-powered workflow. And so I hope you can imagine how you can combine these different skills and the context to create much more advanced workflows if that's what you happen to be interested in, where maybe as part of that conversation, let's say you're asking the agent to help you draft an email template and also generate the images for it using different skills, putting them together, creating a preview inside of your workflow account to where you just have to copy and paste the code, all kinds of things. And it's all living in one single note-taking application. And so I hope that's giving you some ideas about the kinds of things you can do with Workflowy when you combine it with an AI agent. You can set up these complex workflows, which maybe have a lot of different steps, or you're having to use different tools to put all the resources together. And the agent's just going to be able to keep you on track, maybe even generate a checklist for you, just to make sure you don't miss any steps, all kinds of things. And so personally, at least, it's just been really nice to use. Like I said, it's been over a month now. I'm still using it. It's only going to get better as the models get better and cheaper. If you'd like to set this up on your own computer, the links to all the applications and the instructions are going to be in the description below. And that is it for this video. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss my upcoming adventures in the world of AI-powered everything, plus all the other topics that I have to get to eventually. And now I have no excuse because my workflow is going to make sure that I eventually get to everything. So see you in the next one.